No one on the right side of America can stand the star of this movie.
Rachel Zgler is extraordinarily woke, but she's woke in a way that's quite deranged.
She was, as woke as they are.
She just sounds bitter and...
The star, Rachel Zgler, is unbelievably charmless in public.
But you don't seemingly like your own character, so she comes off as an insufferable, whiny brat.
Every time she speaks, she gets less likable.
I don't think they're going to buy it. I don't think they're going to watch it. I don't think they're going to like it.
Spend 1 minute on Snow White and how it totally imploded at the box office this weekend. Rachel Zgler, she's an asshole.
You have nothing to do with the creation of Snow White. Right. You should shut up.
Rachel is literally the star of a Disney movie, and she acts like she's some sort of victim, and that's the sort of mentality that is just poisoning people's minds. Like, she acts like her life is so bad.
I truly do believe that. There's something wrong with her. She's disturbed, she's unhappy, and she thinks it's about feminism and the patriarchy and about abortion. But the reality is she's just not stable, like the majority of people in Hollywood. They're just not stable human beings.
This truly is the worst casting, maybe, in the history of the film industry.
I would highly advise that you boycott this film, no matter how much your children love Snow White.
They spent $170 million to make the thing, and it had the lowest opening, under $50 million, of any of these live-action Disney remakes that they've ever had.
And, you know the saying, go woke, get broke, and Disney's going to lose money on this movie. And I believe it only made less than $1 million in China.
I don't need your business.
If Disney wants to make more woke films that tank at the box office, they are more than welcome to do that, but maybe think of an original idea.
And be swept off of your feet and live happily ever after. No, you should want to be the prince. You should want to go out and fight the bad guys with a sword.
It's just a really incredible story for, I think, young people everywhere to see themselves in.
Snow White is running for president.
I'm launching my campaign.
The clock was ticking down to one of Disney's biggest live-action releases, and the buzz was deafening. How could a remake of such a legendary fairy tale stir up this level of rage, drama, and controversy months before it even saw the light of day? If you asked any disgruntled Disney fan a year ago what they thought about the upcoming Snow White, most of them would have probably shrugged off as another nostalgic trip to the box office. But then, out of nowhere, one actress spoke up. She wasn't shy. She wasn't polite. She wasn't even neutral. She was Rachel Zgler, a rising star determined to modernize a century-old fairy tale by tearing up its roots. Little did she know that those very roots were exactly what millions of viewers still cherished. Then came the Dwarf's controversy, and that's when the wider public really started tuning in. Disney had already come under fire for reworking so many of its animated classics. Some longtime fans complained that the constant live-action reboot machine was wearing thin. But the seven dwarfs were perhaps the most recognizable part of Snow White after her iconic dress. Enter Peter Dinklage, a respected actor known for significant roles on television and film. He spoke out against the idea of dwarfs in a modern adaptation, criticizing it as backward or insensitive. Disney reacted almost instantly, opting to replace the dwarfs with a set of CGI magical creatures that were meant to signal their commitment to inclusivity and progress. Rachel Zgler applauded the decision, publicly stating it was a step forward. But that didn't sit well with many little-person actors who viewed these roles as essential career opportunities. Those roles might have been comedic or fantastical, but they were still some of the few high-profile gigs available for actors under a certain height. To them, having a big studio wipe out that casting possibility felt like a betrayal. Instead of being inclusive, they argued, Disney had erased them. By this point, any sense of harmony that might have surrounded the project was vanishing. On social media, die-hard Disney fans felt torn. Should they defend the modernization effort and hail Rachel as a woke hero, or should they reject the new direction as a slap in the face to the original? Then, making matters worse, Rachel Zgler turned her attention to politics. In a move that might not have seemed shocking for a young star in modern America, she posted heated messages on her personal platforms, taking aim at the people who supported certain political figures. It wasn't just gentle criticism, it was downright hostile, telling them she hoped they never knew peace.
They have been making this film for a very long time because it's just been so scandalized. And so they had to basically put it on ice after people were firstly outraged by Rachel Zgler speaking ill about the prior film, the film that she was remaking. And it's such a weird thing for their whole pitch as feminists to be is like the best thing you can strive to be as a man. Everything will be great once we just act exactly like men. There's nothing special about being a woman. Let's just be men. It just doesn't feel like we're winning.
Suddenly, folks from every corner of the political spectrum started piling on. People called her out, noting Disney's typical family-friendly brand and the necessity to appeal to massive, diverse audiences. Telling half the country you wish them ill will was not what anyone wanted to see from supposedly wide-eyed princess figure. Hollywood observers started gossiping behind the scenes, claiming Disney executives were beside themselves with worry. They had cast an actress who refused to stay off Twitter, refused to hold her tongue, and was apparently clueless about how her vitriol might damage ticket sales. The bigwigs didn't do her any favors either. They kept fueling speculation that the movie's storyline would be drastically reimagined to fit a more modern feminist angle, a move that had already worn out its welcome among many fans. People wanted a princess story with a sprinkle of magic and a dash of romance, not a lengthy lecture about social hierarchies. For a while, everyone hoped the negative chatter might die down, especially once Disney's marketing machine started rolling.
So no prince or a different kind of prince?
I'm sure a lot of people will assume it's a love story just because, like, we cast a guy in the movie. Right. Andrew Burnap, great dude. Yep. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby.
Who the hell are you to say all of Andrew's scenes could get cut? Like, who are you?
Oh, my God.
Are you Disney? I've read your book, and I have. It's a phenomenal book. You're losing generation of loyal viewers. When you think about Snow White, what is the premise? What is the story?
It's a love story. It's a love story.
It's a dream for a girl to grow up and a man falls in love.
I'm really upset that it's the biggest theme here is that it's anti-men. She called him a stalker.
Because you just can't close your mouth. You just can't be sane, even when you do open your mouth. I think this girl does not deserve a feature-length film, but rather she deserves to be in a padded cell.
You want to trash that legacy? That company that now Disney has screwed up the last 5 years trying to please a small percentage of minorities in America? Yeah, we're sick of it. So the more you do this, Disney, Iger, Rachel Zgler, whatever her name is, yes, this is exactly the backlash you're going to get from parents who have kids who are your customers. You're supposed to win parents over. You're talking to kids, the parents pay for the tickets. You have to be a dummy as a marketer to be saying, if I'm Bob Iger, you know what we're doing? Emergency meeting. We're putting Snow White on hold for 2 years, and guess what? Pay her a couple $1,000,000, go away. We're going to bring another person to play this role because you just screwed this thing up.
But there was a problem. Rachel Zgler's interviews were everywhere, and they didn't let up. She'd casually remark that the prince might not even matter in the film. She joked that his scenes could be cut at the drop of a hat. It all contributed to the impression that she held enormous sway over the final product. Fans wanted a bright, enchanting princess. Instead, they got someone who sounded perpetually annoyed at the original source. Then, to top off that tension, there was news of secret focus group screenings that supposedly tanked. While the general public couldn't verify those rumors, it fed the narrative that Disney had a major crisis on its hands. It didn't help that the film's official teaser was met with underwhelming reception. Instead of the usual heart-tugging or nostalgia-laden magic, viewers pick apart the obviously CG dwarfs, the weird glimpses of the storyline, and the overall sense that the movie had taken a beloved classic and forced it into a narrow ideological frame. On top of that, clips of Rachel making flippant remarks about the cartoon's romantic elements continued circulating online like wildfire. "You're going to hate it," sneered one anonymous comment, which racked up thousands of likes. They destroyed the story we all grew up on. Whether that was an overstatement or a fair warning depends on your perspective, but it reflected the hostility swirling around the project. Finally, Disney made the call to keep the theatrical release date intact, though they did push it back once. Some cynics pointed out it was just enough time for the dust to settle, though that meant the film would now open in a notoriously crowded month for family-friendly movies. When the day arrived at last, the box office numbers told a story that all but spelled doom for the live-action princess revival. Analysts had predicted an opening weekend of at least $100 to $150 million domestically, given the built-in name recognition of Snow White. Instead, it limped to around $40-something million. Headlines called it a catastrophe. Commentators who had already criticized Rachel's attitude crowed about how satisfying it was to see Disney flounder after leaning heavily into woke marketing. What was especially painful for Disney executives was how families, the same families that had flocked to see so many of their prior remakes, were basically absent. Parents complained that the new storyline was too preachy, or that it stripped away the timeless fairy tale romance their children were excited to see. Some families boycotted it outright because of the star's political statements. Others felt the Dwarf's fiasco had robbed the film of its whimsical charm. Whatever the reasons, the seats were empty.
You know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Weird.
Interview clip that you read the quote from, but she's gone on to talk about this film numerous times, how she once thought Snow White was creepy, she doesn't like the prince, she thinks she should get paid more because she has to wear that dress, she should get paid for streaming, for every hour she has to wear the dress. I mean, talk about biting the hand that feeds you.
Then they got even crazier and they decided that the dwarves in Snow White weren't woke enough, okay?
These are roles made for actors of my stature. I can't go out for the Harrison Ford or the George Clooney roles because that's not for me.
Right.
And now it's taken away. I don't feel that's right.
Did the dwarfs make it or no?
Well, the CGI dwarfs did. Of course, that goes back to the original controversy where Peter Dinklage, a very talented little person actor, said, why are we doing that? We've hired a Latina actress to be Snow White. That's progressive. But you're going to hire little people to play the dwarfs? That just seems like a step backwards. And then, of course, Disney instantly buckled and said, okay, we're going to add magical creatures.
Even internationally, where Disney often relies on big numbers to offset domestic slumps, the film performed dismally. Some markets simply ignored it. Others bristled at the departure from the fairy tales traditions. By the end of the second weekend, the writing on the wall was clear. Disney had a genuine flop. Merchandise told another bitter truth. Shelves at major retail stores were stocked with tie-in dolls, plushies of the magical creatures, and rebranded Snow White apparel. Within weeks, they were on clearance. Kids just weren't begging parents for these new designs. Toy aisle traffic was minimal, and social media lit up with pictures of discount bins filled with the unsold Dwarfs replacements. To some, it felt like a direct consequence of all the negative publicity swirling around Rachel's interviews. Mothers, reading about the star's combative messages, didn't see a reason to support the movie. Grandparents who had introduced their grandchildren to the 1937 classic saw none of that beloved wonder in the new incarnation. When families no longer want to buy into the brand, a Disney film is in huge trouble. With losses piling up, rumors swirled about fallout within Disney itself. Talk of layoffs, restructuring, or a new direction in the company's live-action department all gained momentum. Rumor had it that other auditioning actresses were secretly relieved that Rachel had shown them exactly what not to do in these big IP-driven roles. In the grand tapestry of Disney's legacy, this fiasco might eventually be remembered as a cautionary tale rather than an outright catastrophe. Still, for the immediate future, it had a seismic impact on the live-action remake machine. Projects that were once green-lit without question suddenly faced additional scrutiny. If Snow White, a story so embedded in Disney history that it's practically the DNA of the studio, could get torn apart by controversy and flop at the box office, what did that mean for all the other reboots on the horizon? Some insiders whispered that the fiasco signaled the end of an era for Disney's unwavering approach to reviving old classics. Maybe it was time to finally invest in new, original stories that wouldn't rouse the fury of longtime fans. At the close of that humiliating opening weekend, angry investors and disappointed fans were left grappling with what Snow White had become. Critics described it as a cautionary morality play, how arrogance, a lack of reverence for beloved source material, and misguided attempts to capture a modern audience can combine into a perfect storm. Rachel Zgler's name is forever linked to this meltdown, a public relations disaster that overshadowed her talent. And for Disney, a company that often touts itself as a magic maker, it was a sobering reminder that magic can vanish if the core audience feels disrespected. In the end, people walked away asking themselves, did this new version fail because it was too woke, or was it doomed simply because Rachel Zgler's dismissive attitude alienated a loyal fan base? Could more measured approach to updating the fairy tale, one that honored the original while introducing new ideas, have worked wonders? Those are the sorts of what-ifs that will linger for a long time. The final takeaway, though, might be simpler. Nostalgia isn't something to be mocked or tossed aside. It's something people cherish deeply. When you undermine that, you risk losing the very audience you're trying to court. And that, ironically, is the one lesson Snow White herself, at least the 1937 version, could have taught us from the beginning. Yes, times change, and yes, stories must evolve. But if you trample everything people love about a classic, expect them to fight back, and expect the box office to feel the sting. This was supposed to be a shining new era for Disney's oldest princess. Instead, it turned into an unthinkable cautionary tale for the entire industry. Call it rude wake-up call or a bitter reality check. Either way, the meltdown will echo for years, a reminder that fairy tales still matter, that fans won't stand for careless scorn, and that sometimes a single star's own words can topple an empire of expectations in one fell swoop.